Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar la mesa redonda de Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USALA Radio. USALA Radio, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa, la mesa redonda de Roundtable, desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal, con the city of brotherly love. Les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. Estamos en compañía de nuestro amigo César Galvez y una entrevista, an interview with Craig LEVIN, who is running for the Common Pleas Court. Good morning. Buenos días.
Good morning.
So, there was a headline that while I was preparing for the interview, a group of 153 former prosecutors signed a letter urging voters to oust DA Larry Krasner. Meanwhile, his opponent in the Democratic primary, Carlos Vega, was accused by the Innocence Project of misstating his role in the murder trial of a man who was later exonerated. So, the law is with us every day, and we don't think too much when we go to vote. We don't think a lot about judges, but judges have a very significant effect on our daily lives. And so we have Mr. Levin here to ask questions about his desire to be a judge, his qualifications. And so Cesar is going to help me with this along the way. So why don't we start by letting Craig explain who he is and why he wants to be a judge.
Well, thank you, and thank you to USALA for having me on today. My name's Craig LEVIN. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas. That's the trial court in our city, whether it's criminal cases, family law cases, civil cases, or orphan court cases. I've been a lawyer. I've been a lifelong Philadelphian, growing up at Broad and Olney, living there until I was 14, until I moved to the Northeast. And I went to Temple, Widener University School of Law, and I've always lived and worked in the city that I love. So for 33 years, I've been practicing law here. I've represented people in civil matters and criminal matters, family law matters, all over federal court, state court, and all over Jersey as well. So I wanted to be a judge because I think I can make a difference. As a lawyer, I get to fight for fairness every day for my clients, but it's one at a time. As a judge, you have a bigger role. And I think what we saw, at least in the last election, that the role that the judges had and that the court had as they stood up and they enforced the Constitution when some of our other legislative branches did not. So I think a judge has an amazing role to level that playing field for everyday Philadelphians, and that's why I want to be a judge, so I can make things fair and equitable for people who haven't been treated fairly or equitably.
That's great. Greg, my friend Cesar had an observation before we started the question about the fact that you have been very close to the Puerto Rican community, that you are sort of working, as we say in Spanish, ras de tierra, you know the people. So Cesar had an observation about that. No?
Yeah, it was out of curiosity that the last time that you talked together, you say you think you have been a couple of times in Puerto Rico.
I had been once in Puerto Rico, but our group, SALEA, we raised money.
Yes.
Yeah, we raised money. And we sent groups of people over to help repair the damage that was done to Hurricane Maria.
Oh, I see. So what did you learn from the Puerto Rican society, and when you and maybe you have the chance to be in the community? I believe you as a volunteer as well, right?
Yeah, so I volunteer for SALEA. It's a Spanish-American organization. They raise money. One of the members, Sammy Sanchez, raises money to buy iPads that are donated to the Philadelphia School District for use with autistic kids. Sammy has a son who's autistic, and he found that the use of the iPad changed his life. So he's been a driving force behind that program that's backed by SALEA. Eddie Lopez, who's the president of SALA and really the driving force of SALA, raises money for food banks and giving out scholarships. It's a charitable organization that is from the Spanish community.
I was reading about, in preparation for this interview, about judges. What are the qualities that we would expect? And there was a panel of judges that came up with a whole list of things. Some of them are very interesting and important, obviously, in terms of selecting a judge. And one of them is called judicial temperament. And it has to do with patience, openness, tact, courage, and one of the things that is lacking many times, common sense. So, how do you feel about it? Do you have the temperament to deal with complicated issues where you have to listen to nonsense from the defense or accusations that seem unfair from the prosecutor? So how do you deal with that?
Well, absolutely. You have to have great judicial temperament. You have to have patience. I've been practicing law for 33 years. I've gone up against other lawyers who try that nonsense. I've gone up against judges. You have to just have your narrow focus and not let that affect what you do and not get that off your game. Because a lot of times other lawyers, they're intentionally trying to get you off your game. One of the things I always do with my clients is when I sit them down and prepare them for court, I tell them, this other lawyer is going to try to get you off your game. You got to stay on your game. You can't take it personally, and you have to see through it because there's light at the end of the tunnel, and you have to know what your goal is there. And as far as judicial temperament, that's one of the big things, and one of the reasons I'm running for judges, because I've been through so many judges, and I think after you've been sitting on the court for so many years, especially if you get on the court at a younger age and you haven't practiced as much law, you don't have that temperament or that patience because you haven't been out there with the clients. And maybe when you're on the bench for a long time, you lose touch with that part of the human aspect. I've been a lawyer for 33 years. If I'm elected judge, I'll be 60 when I hit the bench. So I can serve for 15 years. I think that's a perfect way to cap off my career. And I think that's a perfect amount of time where I'm not going to fall into the same traps that I've seen other judges fall into.
Yes, I really appreciate your time right here. Because I imagine you're a busy person. And I'd like to know about that unique skill that you have, and maybe you have some more contribution to the common case, because I see we have some other candidates. But I would like to listen from you that unique skill that you have that you deserve to be listened.
I think there's really two. From a technical standpoint, I've been a trial lawyer for 33 years. So one of the most important thing a judge does in their duties is to apply the rules of evidence. The only way you could really learn, the rules of evidence is a living, breathing animal, and it changes. It doesn't stay the same. It's always changing in the different fact patterns. Having been a trial lawyer and dealing with the rules of evidence and honing my skills for 33 years, I think that gives me a leg up. That trial experience is so very important. But what I think really is more important is the human aspect, the ability to relate to an everyday Philadelphian. I grew up struggling. My parents had a bad marriage. My dad wasn't around a lot. I remember waking up when I was a young kid, and my mom would have all the furniture against the front door. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. So when my dad would finally come home, God knows whatever time he came home, all the furniture was against the front door, and he's pounding on the door, and that would wake me up. And it was very stressful for a young kid at that time, and we didn't have much. And when my parents got divorced, my mom took us to the Northeast, and we lived in a small little apartment. And I started working from the age of 14, first as a paper boy. And then when I got my license, I worked, and this is going to date me a little bit, I was a dishwasher in a disco. And we're talking about the late 70s. You guys might remember, but
I remember this.
Yeah. So, and I would work to 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and have to go to high school the next day. And I had to pay my way through school. I worked my way as a bartender through college, working again till like 4 o'clock in the morning with 8 o'clock classes. So I've worked hard my whole life. And I've worked with different people from all walks of life all over the city. When you work in a kitchen, as a dishwasher, busboy, a bartender, you're seeing people from all over the city from different walks of life. When I grew up at Broad and Olney, it was an African American neighborhood. There was very few white people at that time. So, I really learned a different community. And when you live in a community where people look different than you, you breathe that community in, you breathe it into your heart, into your soul, and quite frankly, it stays with you the rest of your life. So the ability to understand what it's like to struggle, the ability to live and understand communities where people are different than you, and then my practice of the law. I've always worked for the usual Philadelphia resident. I didn't represent corporations or businesses. It was people with everyday problems, whether it was landlord-tenant problems or family law problems or custody or support, or they got in a car accident. It's things that affect everyday Philadelphians, and I really think that skill sets me apart. Not that the other candidates don't have that, because we have some really tremendously talented candidates, but that ability to know what it's like to struggle and work hard your whole life and then work for the people of our city. And I think that's what sets me apart.
Well, one of the things in the headlines in the news right now is the case of the policeman who was just convicted of 3 counts of having killed a man, Floyd was the first name of George Floyd. And so applying the law without regards to the consequences, that's what is important in this case. Because I think the jury must have been following the proceedings with the consequences in mind of whatever decision they made. And this was very tricky, because if they declare the man not guilty, we were risking riots in the streets. So how do you get away from that kind of situation as a judge?
Well, that's a difficult situation. You're talking about, in some senses, like jury nullification.
Right.
Jurors are human, and they're going to be swayed by consequences such as that. But as a judge, you really got to focus them in, this is the law. You have to apply the law to the facts of the case. I think in this particular case, obviously, I think they did. I think it was obvious what the decision should be made, and they were well aware of what the consequences were. But it is a very difficult thing, and I think that's where a judge really comes, a good judge that takes the time to explain, hey, I understand there's all this noise on this side and that side, but your focus is right here. This is the law. You determine what the facts are, apply it to the law, come to a decision. And it's not easy, but as a judge, that's what you have to do. Like, I did an interview, and a young lady got up and she says, we all had to hold up signs, yes or no. And she says, will you agree to tell the jury they can decide a case on any reason, even just because they don't like the fact that charges were brought? And all my fellow candidates, except for one, all raised yes. But I couldn't raise yes, because as a judge, you can't do that. Now, if a jury wants to nullify something, as a judge, I'm not going to disturb that. But I cannot tell a jury that they can't follow the law. You have to give them the law and tell them that's their obligation. What they do with that is up to them.
In the notes that I was taking about the qualifications for judges, that is defined as courage. So to apply the law requires, no matter what it requires, to apply the law as it is. So we're going to take a short break. En USALA Radio les habla Fernanda Méndez, Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital, César Galvez nos acompaña. Estamos haciendo una entrevista con Craig LEVIN, candidato para la Corte de Common Pleas. Regresamos en un momento.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar la mesa redonda de Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USALA Radio.
You listen to me?
There was great concern about that, yeah. Well, all over the country. Señores oyentes de USA Radio, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda de Roundtable. Les habla Fernando Méndez, César Galvez nos acompaña. Estamos en una entrevista con Craig LEVIN. Craig is a candidate for the Court of Common Pleas, and that's where a lot of minor issues are solved. Minor and not so minor, no? But a lot of like family issues. Are you in any way, would that entail, say, divorce? What issues come before common pleas?
Every issue. There's three, or really four separate courts. There's the family law court, where you're going to get divorces, custody, dependency, truancy, support issues. There is the criminal court, which obviously you're going to get anybody charged with a crime. And then there's a civil court, where you have disputes, whether it be car accidents or contract disputes or real estate disputes. And then there's the orphans court, where you have issues concerning estates or insurance or those type of issues. So it's really the first. There is the municipal court. The municipal court is what they call the people's court. And we all see that on TV. That's a court where it has jurisdiction from anywhere up to $12,000. So any disputes that go up to $12,000 would start in the municipal court. Anything else, really, the trial court is the first level, and that's the level that everybody will first enter the court system.
Do you like to write opinions?
I don't mind writing opinions. I love the intellectual challenge of it's like putting together a puzzle. You find what the applicable law is on the issue, then you see what the facts are, and then you apply it. I do enjoy that. I don't get as much of a chance to do writing in my practice, only because I'm so busy. A lot of it's trial work. But as a judge, to be able to sit down and really focus on one project and come to a conclusion, I look forward to that.
Previously, somebody mentioned, maybe Cesar, or you mentioned the fact that you apply the law, you interpret the law as such. And Judge Scalia on the Supreme Court was famous for just being the letter of the law, you know, whatever the court. Where do you stand on that? Are you a strict constitutional defender, or are you allowed to play with the interpretation?
Well, I think even everybody plays with the interpretation. You see a certain amount of facts, and then you look at the law, and you may want a result, and some judges will shape their view of the facts to the law, so they get the result that they want. But I really truly believe that you have to respect the law, whether you agree with it or not. That's one of the toughest job the judges have, is that you may look at the law and don't agree, and it may end up that you have to render a result that you're not personally happy about, but it's your obligation as a judge to follow that law and render that result, even if it's something that you would prefer didn't happen.
Following the question that just Fernando did, what made the common pleas attractive to you? What was your motivation to be a judge of a common pleas?
I mean, that's where the action is. That's a trial court. I've been a trial lawyer, and one of the things I enjoyed the most is getting in the courtroom. It's the challenge, the intellectual challenge. I'm a competitive guy. I've been an athlete my whole life. As you get older, you don't have, you get older, you can't be an athlete. You don't have that competition. Getting in the courtroom, I love that competition. I love that chess game that you play. So I would really, some people have said to me, oh, once you're on for a few years, you're going to run for an appellate court, where you're not in a trial court. You're just basically listening to arguments and writing opinions. I said, no, I want to be in the trial court. I want to be with the people of the city. I don't want to be out writing, listening to lawyers arguing and writing opinions. I want to see everyday people coming before me with everyday problems that I can hopefully solve. So that's what appeals to me.
Have you anticipated any challenges when you go into the common pleas? Any challenges, phases?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's a new job for me. As much as I've been in the courtroom and I understand the courtroom, being a judge and you got to make those decisions. as a lawyer, I get to argue and I'm trying to convince a judge what decision I want him or her to make. But as a judge, I mean, the big challenge is I'm going to be the person making the decision. And that's why I think being a lawyer for 33 years really prepared me for that. There were candidates that ran for, they've been lawyers for 3, 4, 5 years. I never felt I was ready for this job until I really, had 25, 30 years in. Now I feel like I'm ready for it.
So we live in the age of information. So everything that happens in courts or in this land sort of becomes public, and especially if it's controversial headlines and whatnot. Is there a case that you listened to and you said, "I wish I was involved in this. I wish I could do that"?
Maybe not in the public cases, but when I discuss cases, a lot of times what we do as lawyers is we bounce stuff off of each other. And a lot of times when other lawyers are bouncing scenarios or their cases, I was like, I wish I was the judge here because X, Y, and Z should be done. So it's more those type of cases.
Yeah. What do you think the defense for Mr. Chauvin, who put the video on display, the video that showed the policeman with the knee on the back of Floyd, and there were critics saying, if I was the defender, I would not be playing that video again.
Well, I didn't see it. I've been between my practice and my campaign. I haven't had a chance to really watch much.
But that's what happened.
Well, I guess he had his reasons for it, but I think that videotape was so devastatingly bad for him. I don't know how you could look at that videotape and come to any other conclusion than what the jury did. So as a defense lawyer, I may not want to put that and continue to reinforce those images that were in the tape.
Yeah, that was, I personally, in terms of common sense, I thought that was a bad idea. I have not known too much about the legal profession, but it was just like, why are you playing this? That's the main reason this guy is on trial, because of that video. There was no other reason.
Right. Unless there was some reason that he could use that video to try to prove a point, but that's obviously was a double-edged sword.
Yes. Now, in terms of, you already mentioned that you have a sense of civic responsibility, of responding to the needs of the community. And you say you have experience because you have been a lawyer for 30 some years. What do you think in those contexts? What do you think prepared you to be a judge?
Well, one, the courtroom experience, but two, dealing with people in this city. And I know I said this before, but I think having the ability to understand the issues that people go through. If you're sitting on the bench, you're going to make, like I volunteer, I'm on the board of a reentry program, Community Forgiveness and Restoration. And working with the returning citizens give you a different perspective on the issues that they went, what brought them to that point in their life. So when you're sitting on the bench, you're going to make decisions that are going to affect their life, the family's life, the community's life. And if you don't really understand how that affects people or what you can do to make their life better, there's programs out there that you can use to try to avoid incarceration. So getting out there in the field and working with people and understanding those issues will make me a better judge, because at the end of the day, I make my decision and get off the bench, but those decisions live on forever in people's lives. So I think, that's really important.
And I'm on the list of qualities or qualifications for a judge. This panel had listed professional activities, legal education, teaching, bar activities, publications. So of all those, which ones have you done in abundance, or that you can claim credit for doing?
Well, the community service is really a number one. Let me take a step back. As far as bar activities, I'm on the board of governors of the Philadelphia Bar Association. I'm very proud of that. You have to. That's a whole election across all the Philadelphia lawyers, then they have to vote for you. And I ran in 2019 and I won that election. I have a 3-year term. So my peers in the legal profession voted me to that position. And through the Bar Association, we do a lot of stuff trying to help the community, not only the legal community, but the people in Philadelphia. So I find that was some of the activities. And then besides all the pro bono work I have done throughout my career, I volunteer now for the Senior Law Center. I do pro bono work for SALA. But for the Philadelphia Democratic Party, I went down there because they have a pro bono program where they do free legal services for people across the city. It's not very well publicized, and I've argued with the powers that be that it should be because they're doing great stuff. But I went down there in 2019, and it was an opportunity for me to do pro bono work. And they made me the chair of the legal department at the Philadelphia Democratic Party, which is not a political position. Mm-hmm. I run the pro bono program. We have volunteered attorneys. Now, what typically happens is after an election like 2019, none of the lawyers there's no volunteers out there. So I basically took the brunt of all the pro bono work, and I've handled at this point approximately about 100 pro bono matters. Now, as we approached the new elections, lawyers started showing up, and I've been able to now give some other lawyers some of this work. But my service to the community, sometimes I spend 3/4 of a week, and my work weeks have been basically 7-day work weeks at this point between my practice, my doing pro bono work, and my campaign. So I think that is something when you talk about service, getting out there in the community and helping people for free. I have a small firm. It's just myself and one other person. So when I do free legal work, I'm not working at a big firm where they're collecting a paycheck every week, where they're required to do 10, 20, or 50 hours a year of pro bono work. I mean, when I do pro bono work, I'm really doing it for free.
Great. Have you done any teaching?
I haven't done any teaching. I consider coaching teaching.
Coaching.
I coached ice hockey for 17 years. The last 7 years, I coached at a high school level. So mentoring young men and teaching them. For me, coaching wasn't just teaching them the skills that they needed to be successful. It was also life skills. Right. Explaining to them how hard it is to work hard, and that good things come from working hard. And I think being able to mentor young men in that fashion.
Yeah, I coached soccer, so I know what you're talking about. It's not just teaching the sport.
It's life skills. It's teamwork. Right. It's working together.
Absolutely. So, Craig, we're going to take another short break here in USALA Radio. Les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. César Galvez nos acompaña en una entrevista. We're interviewing Craig LEVIN, who's running for the Court of Common Pleas. So, no se vayan, regresamos en un momento.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USALA Radio.
Señores oyentes de USALA Radio, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal, donde hay calles llenas de huecos. Les habla Fernando Méndez, nuestro amigo César Galvez nos acompaña. We're doing an interview with Craig LEVIN, who is running for the Court of Common Pleas. So, one question that came to mind as you were speaking about, I forgot now what you were saying, but are you in favor of judges being appointed or elected?
That is a great question. So right now, there's only 8 states, Pennsylvania being one of them, where judges are elected. I think, like in New Jersey, judges are appointed, but I think that's just a different form of politics. And if you have the inside track, you're going to become a judge, and I think that shuts a lot of people out of that process. And what I've found, and having to be a politician, to run to be a judge is not really the ideal situation. But this process, I think, is invaluable because what it forces us to do as candidates is to go around the city, to go to rec centers. And I know it's the pandemic now, so we can't do as much. But in a normal process, we would go to rec centers or people's houses or basements and talk and listen. More importantly, listen and understand the issues that are affecting them. And I ran for judge in 2019. It was such an amazing learning experience. I came really close to winning, and I was disappointed when I lost. But I learned so much, and I know 2 years later, if I win this time, I'm going to be so much better of a judge than I would have been because of the issues that I've learned. The citizens of the city of Philadelphia force you to be educated about the issues that affect you, because when we go and speak, we're going to be questioned about X, Y, and Z. We need to know about it, and we need to understand those issues. So I think by the time you win an election and you get on the bench, that it's a more valuable experience having to go through an election. It's not as much, it's a tough process. And there's a lot of people that would be excellent judges that don't want to subject themselves to this process because it's not easy, and there's plenty of days that I wake up and I go, why am I doing this? But the education you get by the citizens of our city make you a better judge. So I think this is really the best process.
And in fact, that's one of the questions that I was going to ask you. How comfortable you feel right now running for judge? How is the support for the community in this situation? Besides, on the contrary of the 2019, how do you feel right now?
I feel great. It's a great process, and the people, like you meet people that I wouldn't normally meet, and people take up your cause. It's such a humbling experience when people you don't really know, they take up your cause, they pat you on the back, they say, hey, I believe in you, I want to help you get elected. They make financial contributions to help you get there because unfortunately it's an expensive process. And it's really, I love it. I'm really comfortable. I have a lot of support this time from labor, from the party, from the communities. So I feel really good. I love this process.
So even though, like you mentioned that the process of being appointed is too political, the process of getting elected by popular vote is also becomes political when you need the support of the party. You're running as a Democrat, I believe.
Correct.
You need the support of unions in this city. The unions are very strong. So it becomes, in a way, political, no matter in which direction you go. So it's a choice of which one is less damaging to.
It's no doubt a very political process, but the educational process you get from the citizens, I think, is what makes it. I mean, if it was judges being appointed, it's a different type of politics. Mm-hmm. So, unfortunately, to become a judge, you got to be able to do both roles. You got to be a politician. There's no way around it.
How long is the position? Anytime you get elected for how many years? 5, 10?
It's a 10-year term, and after a 10-year term, you run for retention. So it's a simple yes or no vote. So once you win your election for a judge, you really don't have to run again. In 10 years, people either vote yes or no, and it very rarely does a judge not get retention.
So, but you need the support of the bar for that, or it doesn't matter? It's just popular vote?
It's a popular vote, but the Bar Association serves a very vital role. They investigate every candidate. I've been recommended by the bar. They investigated me first in 2019 and again this year, and they recommended me both times.
Excellent. Great. In case somebody wants to know more about you, where can we find your information?
You can go to CraigLevinForJudge.com. I also have the same Facebook page, Craig Levin for Judge. You can go and try to friend me on my personal Facebook page. I'm happy, Craig Levin. You can send me an email at crl@crllaw.com. I'm happy to answer any questions, and that would be the place you could find information about me.
This is a tough question, but I'd like to know if you have seen other qualities in another candidate that you think they're good ones as well.
Oh yeah. There, we have. It's a small field. It's only I think 16 candidates at this point, and there's some really qualified candidates. It's a real horse race. We're all working hard, and we do these. We'll do a ward meeting or a community group, and after we're all done speaking, the moderator usually goes like, "Whoa, this is going to be a tough choice." So we have to go out there and work hard and try to separate ourselves from the pack. But there's some really talented lawyers now running for judge. So the city of Philadelphia can rest assured that whoever is elected, you're going to get a good batch of judges this time around.
You mentioned your connection to the community as one of the things that qualify you above other candidates. That you're more in touch, sort of, with the common people. What other quality you see in yourself that will elevate you above other candidates?
That's simple. I care. I care about people. I want to help people. I've done it my whole life. They say there's no such thing as a superpower. It's only for movies, but it's not true. When you can help another human being, when you can change their life, when that's an amazing feeling, and I really enjoy doing that. And as a judge, you have your opportunities to do that. I mean, I've coached kids that I've run into 5 years later, and I just didn't think I did anything special. And they would say, Coach, I'm so happy to see you. I just wanted to tell you, I had a kid, he was 25, I ran into him. He goes, I just always wanted to tell you, you changed my life. And I was like, I couldn't think of what I did. I always gave him a little extra attention and helped him out. He was one of the lesser players on the team, so he needed a little more work. And what he said to me, he goes, I was 17, 18 years old, and I didn't have any confidence in myself. And you had confidence in me, and you mentored me, and you encouraged me, and it changed the way I looked at myself, and it changed my life. And when that happens, that's really powerful. And that's what I want to bring to the bench. I want to not look at people that are just before me as another person and what did this person do? I want to try to see what's out there that I can possibly help them or her and give them another opportunity.
So in this segment, we still have a couple of minutes. If you could talk about that. What is it, the return of people to the community? What is the group? Yes. So you want to talk about this, your role in this, what you have done regarding that group?
Right. So our reentry group was started by a man called Tommy Robinson at SEI Phoenix. He's been incarcerated for 21 years at this point. And he started this program on the inside, trying to prepare the gentlemen as they were about to leave prison so they could face life and not come back. And he kept seeing people coming back. So we're the outside partner of that program that Tommy started. And what we do is we assign people a life coach. If somebody had a substance abuse problem, we assign them a life coach that has that experience, somebody that they can talk to on a daily basis. We have 5-week boot camps where we bring them down to Temple University on Saturday morning for 5 hours. We bring speakers in, whether they be lawyers or accountants or people like Suave, who we know. Suave came in and spoke.
Familiar with Suave.
Yeah, who's an amazing young man who's been through the process. And what we basically do is we want to mentor them. And we help them find jobs, which is the most important. We have to get them productive in the society so they don't turn to doing something that isn't productive. And we partner with FedEx and UPS, and I just made a connection with the roofers. So that's what we do. It's been kind of hindered by the pandemic, but we're looking to get really fired up again.
Yeah, tough campaigning in this pandemic when your face covered. So sort of incognito candidate. But so you have succeeded, at least so far. You feel that you are catching on. You feel that you have a good reception in the community.
I think I have an excellent reception in the community. I have support all across the city in every different neighborhood. I have giant labor support and giant support from the party. It's been really tough in the pandemic, but it's a lot harder for the other candidates who are new, who weren't around. but I've been out in the communities my whole life, so they know me, so it's a lot easier. I'm not a strange person. You walk into the Southwest Philly, you go to 50th and King Sessing at the rec center there, they know who Craig LEVIN is. So I think that gives me an advantage.
You have the support of the black clergy also, right?
I have a support of the black clergy, I do.
Well, that's how important is that in a city that is, population, the black population is pretty big. So.
Well, I think it's really important because they're community leaders, and when they put their stamp of approval on you, people are going to follow that, and they don't do that lightly. Trust me. But they know who I am. They know what I've done in the community. They know what I have in my heart, and I'm really honored by that endorsement. Especially.
Now, the party has been controversial recently because they refused to support the DA candidate, Larry Krasner, and they traditionally have not supported Maria Quiñones, who is on city council as a Hispanic councilwoman, and so that's to get the support of the party. It's not easy. So how did you maneuver that one?
Well, because I went down there and I said I'm here to help the communities out, and what happens is the way it works is they vote on you. So when they see that you're out in the community helping constituents in their various wards, then they vote on you. And I know
who votes on you.
The ward leaders.
Ward leaders.
So there's 66 wards, but there's 69 ward leaders. There's a couple of wards that are split in two, and they all vote on who they're going to endorse. I think with the district attorney's race, it was very difficult because there's strong feelings on all across the city, and I think what the party decided to do is let each ward leader determine who they wanted to support. And I've heard even in certain wards, they're split on who they're going to support. So I think it wasn't that the party didn't want to endorse one candidate or the other. They wanted to give the right to each individual ward leaders to make that decision for their particular community, because some communities want one candidate, some want the other. And if the party just threw down the hammer and said, you have to support one candidate only, it would almost be, instead of a democracy, it would be like a king. So I think the party was kind of wise. Yeah, right. I think the party was wise to say each ward, you make your own decision. And that's the way a democracy works.
Do you think Krasner's relaxation in terms of drug use, do you think that's one of the negatives?
Well, I don't think you can criminalize poverty, and that's what happened. If you look at just marijuana,
right.
That there's a strong movement across the country to decriminalize that.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing it now in New Jersey, in New York. I know there's bills pending in Harrisburg to do it in Pennsylvania. So I think that something like that is important because there's people whose lives have been ruined for just having small amounts of marijuana, which at this point is probably going to be legal in a short period of time.
Right. Is the Innocence Project part of that, helping people who are in jail for small uses of drugs and all that? So I think that's part of that. No, although the Innocence Project goes deeper into people.
I think they go deeper, but as part of this kind of wave of decriminalizing marijuana, it is also to expunge records.
Right.
So, and I think that's an important component if that law is passed in Pennsylvania.
Okay, we're going to take another break here in USALA Radio. Les habla Fernando Méndez. Tenemos una entrevista con Craig LEVIN, who's running for Court of Common Pleas. Nos acompaña César Galvez y Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. Regresamos en un momento.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USALA Radio.
Señores oyentes de USALA Radio, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal. Les habla Fernando Méndez, nuestro amigo y colega César Galvez está aquí con nosotros en una entrevista. We are interviewing Craig Levin, who is running for the Court of Common Pleas. I want to read something from that list and get your opinion on this. One of the things that they recommend that we analyze and study is character. And that this most important overall quality is a key intangible. Character is sort of intangible, like charisma in a way, no? Mm-hmm. The applicant should be of the best character. He or she should have a positive reputation in every professional and residential community. His or her background should be free of references to immorality or indiscretions. He or she should be free of history of substance abuse or substance dependence, and free of indications of domestic violence, publicly unacceptable conduct, and the like. Candidates should be financially stable. So those are fairly, very concrete expectations, right? I sort of like this, but character per se and charisma, one of those things that you cannot define. So, what is your take on this? What I just read you.
I agree. Listen, a judge is one of the most important roles anybody can have in our society, and there should be a high bar, especially when it comes to character. I think that's one of the most important traits. I couldn't agree with that more, and I think I hit every point on there. I'm good. I'm free from any issues.
No immorality or indiscretions.
Not that I know.
No skeletons marching out of your closet.
No, listen, I ran for judge in 2019, and I'm running again now. If there were skeletons, they would have come out. No, listen, nobody's perfect. But I don't have anything that would impugn my character. Not
even small skeletons that could prop up suddenly.
Listen, maybe when I was driving, I cut somebody out, but that was an accident.
Okay. Now, that reminds me of one of our famous city council members who drove for 21 years without a license.
Oh, okay.
We found out he was a city council member with no license to drive. So, tell us what you would do on the first day in court as you organize yourself. When you arrive and you sit on that bench. I was just like watching Donald Trump saying, when I sat there behind that desk, things change. So how do you feel about that?
Well, if I am to agree with Donald Trump on anything, and I really don't, I would agree on that statement. I think that's a true statement. I know I'm going to be, I don't know, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I've always been in awe of judges, and I've always given them amazing respect. I know that first day when I put that robe on and I sit up there and I'm looking down because, they put us higher up. But I'm going to feel the difference, and I'm going to feel the enormity of that job, and I know I could fill that job. But yeah, it's going to be a special moment. I think I'm going to sit back and probably just breathe it all in for a good 10 or 20 seconds, and then get right to work.
Yeah, putting on that robe is like a uniform in a way, in ancient times, well, not so ancient, but you still have wigs and you used to have all this stuff now, but that's gone. Actually, you watch Australian courts. I think they still use the wigs.
I was actually in London right after I graduated law school. I took a little trip to Europe, and I went to watch cases in the courts in London, and they wore the wigs, and they talked in the British accent, and it was just, "My lord," and and they had and they all wore wigs. It was great. I loved it. We wouldn't do it here, but
it's very formal, no?
It's formal, but it's tradition, and I think it gives you the importance of what you're doing.
Cesar?
Yes, I was thinking about some discussions that I had with him about education and the mental health of this city. And I imagine if you become a judge, you're going to have those cases.
Oh, yeah.
In bench. Tell me about your perspective of the importance of having mental health in this city.
Well,
kind of think about it.
yeah, I mean, I think especially if you're in family court or criminal court, the mental health comes into issue in a lot of cases. And you have to be able to recognize that and address those issues and not penalize people. A lot of mental issues, you're going to look at drug abuse. You look at our veterans. You know, we have a veterans court for veterans who come in with substance abuse issues, and that's something I would like to get involved with. I've done work with veterans in the past, and I think recognizing those issues as a judge is really important. You can't just look at somebody and say they did X, Y, and Z. If they have a problem, you get them help. You give them that opportunity, that second chance that they need. And I think you got to recognize those issues when they come before you.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were talking about that, about the group that took over the Parkway here in Philadelphia. That's a very difficult situation. What if that comes before your court, that situation there?
Well, that I can't answer any issues that may come before my court or prevented from the judicial rules of conduct. But that, just to speak generally, it was a very, I was watching on how that issue would be handled because it was a very difficult situation. It could have turned into what we saw years ago with MOVE.
Right.
And there was just a documentary on the whole MOVE thing. And I remember that, watching that day by day when I was younger. I forget, I must have been in my teens or early 20s. And the fact that the situation was able to be handled without it turning into something like that, I was very happy about.
Yeah, that was when I think the houses were bombed, I think.
Yeah, and I just, with my wife and I, probably a couple months ago, I can't remember, everything's a blur now, but we watched that documentary and it brought back a lot of memories. And I also saw a lot of things that either I didn't see at the time or I didn't remember. And it was really a devastatingly bad situation.
Right. So has your opinion shifted as you are growing older and you have more experience and you see, as a judge, as a lawyer, you see a lot of cases. Have you progressed, sort of becoming more understanding, more liberal perhaps, or more aware that the law is the law?
I think, life changes you in so many ways. And I think wisdom, I'll call it wisdom, and experience really play into anything or the way you look at stuff. But I think as I've aged, as I've gotten older, and I've seen the movements across this country, and I see the injustices time and time again, that really shapes you. And you're looking at everything through a different glass. Things when I was growing up that was acceptable aren't acceptable now, and you understand why. So I think with age comes wisdom, maybe not beauty, but definitely wisdom, and I think that really serves you well.
Well, you want to give us the 30-second elevator speech before we call an end to this interview?
Sure. I mean, hopefully you've heard all about me through this interview. You see what kind of person I am. I really want to serve this city. I'm ready to do public service. I want to make a difference in people's lives. I have the experience as a lawyer, but more importantly, I have the lived experience in my lifetime and everything that I've done, the way I've grown up, my hard work, and I'll be a real asset to the bench, and I really hope I get the support of anybody that is going to go out and vote on May 18th. Just remember, May 18th, I am Craig Levin. If you're voting by mail, I'm the 4th judge listed on the Court of Common Pleas. Same thing if you go into the voting booth, but I'll be ballot number 12.
Well, thank you, Craig, for this time, and really interesting responses that we had. And we're going to wish you luck with your election, and I just hope not to be before your court in any way. And thank you, my friend César, for coming to us. And Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. Se despide Fernando Méndez. Hasta la próxima.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales. por USALA Radio.